Aloha and welcome to another 9th Island RC. Today, got something special for you. Apologize that not on my workstation again because it does still have that other project that I mentioned in the previous video, and we'll have something on that coming soon. But today, I've got something special for you, going back to Mini Z, or technically 1/28 size, and today got the Atomic SZ2. But today we're going to do a little unboxing. So let me move this aside for now, bring that back out in a little bit. But what comes in the box? Well, gonna start at the bottom. Just gonna pull all these bags out and you'll understand why. So, basically these comes in numbered bags of 1 through 14 plus a little extra. However, as you'll notice, bags 1 and 2 aren't numbered. You see bag 3. All the other bags, except for the last 2, they're all numbered. So, what do you get? Well, bag number 1, we've got your screws. In bag number 2, got all your bearings. And for those of you that are used to something like an MR03, basically the rear wheel drive, you notice that there are a lot more bearings. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a complicated build. No worries though. So, we get to bag 3. Now as you notice, all the carbon fiber parts, including this gold colored one, and that gold color is only on the surface. So what comes in bag 3? Well, obviously you got the chassis. You also have, I'm not sure if you can see them, but you got the shock towers. You have your upper brace, you know, sometimes referred to as a top deck, whatever you want to call it. You've also, that little gold piece, that is the, what's called the rear carbon mount. This is the rear piece that is attached on top of the rear bulkhead and part of mounting the rear upper suspension arms. This you'll actually be using, I believe, in step 16. It's on page 19 of the manual. And then somewheres in here, there should be a motor mount. Oh, wait, there, I think that's it. I think it's hiding behind the sticker. Nope. That's actually part of one of the 2 servo mount options. Motor mount is in here somewhere, I do promise. I saw, there it goes. Oh. So, I think that's in there. So, that is bag 3. Moving on to bag 4. This is, looks like your steering post. That would be the steering post. And part of the steering arm. The steering post, kind of like a Y, a little bit of a Y-shaped thing here. So that is also the 2 of the mounts on the front for the upper brace. Moving on to bag 5. Bag 5 is the servo mount options. And yes, it does give you 2 different servo mount options. The reason is because the Atomic servo, there are 2, technically 3 different versions. 2 of them are the same, but I guess the gearing or the motor is different because one is for drift and the other is for racing. That one is 8.5 millimeters thick, and that one actually will use this large piece that you see here. This other aluminum piece and this plastic piece, as well as that other carbon fiber piece that's in bag 3, that is used if you are building with the 11 millimeter thick servo. So I will be going with the 8.5. I feel it's just a little more sturdy. The mount puts a little more weight down, and it just seems to be a better all-around option. the 8.5 ones are newer servos, whereas the 11 is an older one. So again, another reason to go with the 8.5. Moving on to bag 6. This is going to be your front and rear diffs. Front and rear differentials. And these parts are tiny. You can see all the balls in there. Note that the balls that are in here are not just for the front and rear diffs. These are also for the center, basically your spur, center diff spur. So do not lose any. There are 25 in here, and you will need 25. I believe the front and rear diffs each use 8, and the center uses 9. So don't lose any. Moving on to bag 7, still working on the front and rear diffs. These are the front and rear gearboxes that the diffs will go into and will be mounted to the bulkheads. You also see one of your drive shafts in here. This is an aluminum one, and I don't believe they have a steel version for the front drive shaft yet. For the rear drive shaft, on the other hand, it does come with the aluminum one, but there is an upgrade that is a steel drive shaft. So that should pretty much cover, one other thing that's all part of that. Speaking of the center diff, we move on to bag 8, and that is your center diff. And part of the center diff actually installation is in bag 9. Oh, this piece right here. This piece is actually part of the center diff setup, and because this is what is called the center block, and using 2 bearings, one on each end, the center diff actually goes through it, and that's what stabilizes your center drive shaft. So in a way, bag 8, although it has to do with this, is also part of this. And speaking of bag 9, so this is also your front and rear bulkheads. Notice how with every manufacturer, they seem to have a color scheme. Tamiya, obviously blue. Losi, or actually TLR, I don't even remember. I think it's pinkish or red. Atomic, they like everything gold. Moving on to bag 10. And I should have been mentioning the steps earlier, I do apologize. So this is going to be steps 16 through 18. I should have mentioned, so bags 1 through 4 are going to be covered in steps 1 and 2. Bag 5 will be covered in steps 3 through 6. Bag 6 is covered in step 7. Bag 7 covers steps 8 and 9. Bag 8 covers steps 10 and 11. Bag 9 covers steps 12 through 15. And bag 10, as I just said, is step 16. Moving on to bag 11. This is your rear suspension assembly, as well as the rear uprights and all pieces associated. The mount, basically what would be your C and D blocks on the lower, and then the front upper mount as well. And that will be covered in, step 10, or bag 10 is steps 16 through 18, which is also bag 10 and 11 are steps 16 through 18. Brain freeze. Okay, let's get rid of the brain freeze and move on to bag 12. Bag 12, which will be covered in steps 19 through 21. This is your front suspension assembly, as well as the remaining parts of your steering. So you got your pins there and more shims. So that's bag 12. Moving on to bag 13. these are your dampers, or what most people call shocks. Technically, they're not shocks. There's no oil in them. They're not oil filled, they're not air filled. There's basically just a metal rod with a spring. You can adjust by different springs, and as you'll see in the build, you can also put grease on the shaft, because the metal shaft does go into another piece, plastic piece, and that can sort of kind of act like oil. If you watched my build on the Reflex Racing RX28 SE, you'll see that I mentioned that in that video. So there's your dampers. And finally, bag 14. This is your battery cover, it's your body mounts, it is the included pinion, which, let's see, what do we got here? It says it's a 30 tooth. So if you're using this for mod racing, that would be a good starting point. I'm going to be using it for essentially an open all-wheel or super stock type all-wheel. So I'm actually going to start with either a 27 or 28. I do have both, and I'll cover that in the upgrade section. But there you go, and that would be step 25. That is the final step of the build. What else do you get in the bag? You get some wheels. You got your typical 8 or 8.5 millimeter for the front, and you got your 11 millimeter for the rear. I honestly am not sure what the offset of these is. I will try and figure that out by the time I do the build video, so that I can mention that for those who want to get aftermarket wheels. Of course, as always, the wheels you use are going to be dependent on the body that you're using. And then they also include, interestingly, a Phillips, probably a number 0, a flathead screwdriver, and there's a reason for that. Think, why is there a flathead screwdriver in a Mini Z kit? That would be because the diffs, in adjusting the tension, adjusting the tightness of the ball diffs, you actually use a flathead screwdriver to screw in the center shaft through between the drive cups. So you got that, you got yourself a wheel nut, you got yourself a little drill bit, not sure what that's for. Looks like there are a couple of hex wrenches and sandpaper. Why is there sandpaper? So there you have it. There is the unboxing of the SZ2 from Atomic. And finally, you can't build a kit without a manual. Obviously, you saw the box. You saw how small the box is. You know that there's no way that they could package a manual inside the box. You'll have to download the PDF and print it out. Now, before I cover the manual, I would like to point something out. Sometimes computers don't have certain fonts installed, especially when a PDF uses, non-standard, custom fonts, whatever. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because this manual actually uses a non-standard font for most of it. And in printing it on an inkjet printer, you see what happens. I mean, look at this. It's mostly unreadable. So, in printing the manual, to be completely honest, I don't recommend printing it on an inkjet printer. If you want something that looks far better, print it on a LaserJet. Seriously. Just to give you an idea how much better the imagery looks. Granted, yeah, you're going to lose the coloring. They did the anodized aluminum parts in this goldish yellow color. They highlight certain things by using red, but you really don't need that. I mean, you know what the color's going to look like. So That's why, if you look at this just for example, I mean, just the graphic image itself is so much more clear with the laser printer, and more importantly, the text is more clear. And the reason is, in this case, is HP laser printers, whatever font that they used, it is one of the standard fonts, or at least there is one that is close enough to it that it recognizes it, and it prints it out in something far more easier to read. So again, in printing out the manual, definitely print using a laser printer, not an inkjet printer. Just throw the inkjet away. So just want to cover a few quick things in the manual just so that you can get a general idea. Starting with the servo, they actually cover the servo on 2 different pages. First one, step 3 EC, I crossed it out because I'm not doing the 11mm thick servo. I'm doing the 8mm thick. You also notice that I've already gone through the manual and I've written in the numbers of the upgrade parts that'll be used. Of course, since I already built the the front and rear diffs, I wrote done. Just clarifying that for myself, not for the viewers, just for myself. But I mean, you can see that there really aren't many words to the manual, but with this build, you don't need them. All you need is the basic information. For example, in here, for the front and rear diffs, you use 2 different two different bearings and also a different number of shims in each one. What I mean by that is, yes, they are both 6x10, but one side uses a 2.5, one side uses a 3. Also, something I should definitely point out, notice how with the stock plastic diff it says to use 1 shim on one side and 4 shims on the other. If you are going to build using the aluminum diff, the shim order is different. The aluminum diffs do come with their own build manuals, and they also reference what the different order of these shims should be. So don't worry about that right here, because if you are going to build with the aluminum, then you'll have that information. Other than that, it's a pretty easy to follow manual. Interesting that as simple as the center diff is, it covers 3.5 pages. Going up through, mounting the front and rear diffs and the center into the front and rear bulkheads. This is covering the rear upper. This is the piece that I was talking about, that the stock piece is the 3 dot or 3 degrees, and then obviously the piece that you already installed somewheres. Apologies. Not sure where it is. Maybe it was installed. Oh, because it comes up soon. That's right. Sorry. So it comes up right here. So this is also the 3 dot that's included with the kit. This piece is plastic. This piece is carbon fiber. If you get the 1 degree or 2 degree, those are only available in aluminum. They also offer the 3 in aluminum, but the 1 and 2 are only in aluminum. And they will include a new carbon mount piece, as well as a new toe angle mount piece, because they are set up for different degree angles. In looking at the front, so here you move to the front, this is the plastic front upper suspension mount piece. This is the piece that would be aluminum if you go with the front sway bar kit. Now, something they mentioned here is that this piece is not this long. You notice it's a bit longer. Thankfully it is plastic. You do need to cut off exactly where the little step is. You need to cut it off. I would assume that it's because this piece is actually a piece that was originally used with another kit, and that kit uses it longer. They came up with a way to use the exact same piece instead of having to design another one. Pay particular note to the diameters of the balls that are going in. The bottom one should be the 3.5 millimeter diameter ball. The upper one is the 3. Don't get those mixed up. I know someone who actually built and they installed the wrong ones at first and wondered why the bottom one was just slipping in so easily into the lower suspension arm and why they couldn't get the upper one in. They realized it pretty quickly, but you know, had a good laugh on that one when he told me. Same thing with the damper. This is the hollow one that the pin of the other lower piece goes into, and the same thing. You need to cut off right where the downstep is. These are too long, and what you will end up causing is you'll bind your suspension because you will be binding your dampers. They will be too long. There won't be any downward suspension movement. And last but not least, somewhere in there I forgot to mention it, but I also did get the aluminum body mount. For some reason I may have put the piece somewhere else accidentally, but the body mount, which is only for hard bodies, comes in plastic, not carbon fiber. Would be fantastic if this had been carbon fiber, but it's not. It's plastic. So I highly recommend getting the aluminum body mounts. You know, the stock battery mount, again, go with the carbon fiber. It definitely is a much better option. And then finally, they don't show it in here, but there is also, I believe, the plastic body mounts if you're using a Lexian body. The kit also does give you a nice gear ratio chart, showing you what the final drive ratio is depending on the pinion that you use. And then here is a list of the upgrade parts. However, this list is not updated to the most recent. Notice that this was printed back in April of last year. So this list is almost a year old, and there are other upgrade parts now available. So there you have it, the Atomic SZ2 unboxed. Until next time, mahalo.